Hello there. Welcome to the Sacred Knowledge Living podcast. My name is Paul.
I am Rhea, and we are so happy to have all of you here today.
So welcome, and thank you for joining us. This is our third episode, and as you can see, we keep evolving.
That's right.
Keep changing and expanding and doing our best to improve the aesthetic of things.
Yes.
So we hope you enjoy. Today we actually have a theme that we're going to focus on, and it is related to
Navigating 2025.
10 rules for doing that. Rhea recently put out a video on the channel that was called 10 Rules for 2025.
Navigating 2025. Yep.
Navigating 2025. And we've got those 10 rules. We're going to go into them a little bit, and we're going to discuss what exactly those rules entail, how you can really dig into that groove and live the best 2025 that is possible for your life.
I'm so excited about this.
I'm glad you're excited. All right. So I've got the magic list here. I'm just going to use the magic floor element here and bring up our list, which starts with
Know thyself.
Know thyself.
That's
starting
right.
with yourself. So what do you think makes this one of the most important starting rules for 2025, Rhea?
I just feel if you know yourself, there's nothing that can get in the way of you and what you need to do in order to bring your dreams to life or live the life you desire to live.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that you get to know yourself, know what your boundaries are,
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff.
And so, like, when we talk about knowing yourself, it's more than just your, like, identity, more than just your surface characteristics. You're talking about your inner self,
Your inner self.
principles, your values. What you believe in,
Yeah.
all of your experiences, all of the
Mm-hmm.
lessons from your experiences. And I feel like that's the one thing people kind of skip out on,
I think so.
is getting to know themselves, because that can be a bit of an uncomfortable process.
That's right. And I feel we have to spend time getting to know ourselves, like really get to know ourselves to understand, like, okay, what am I doing here? Who am I? And what am I trying to create with who I am?
So it's like, how do we define ourselves, like, in reality,
Yeah.
right? Are we the job we have? Are we the
People that people tell us we are.
right? Are we
Yeah.
the objects we own, right? I'm a homeowner. Are we our parental status? Like, there's all these different ways that we can define ourselves. And it's not like there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of, like, how deeply do you want to define yourself?
I feel it's really important that we understand who we are, because when we don't know who we are, then we don't really know what the world is about, or I feel there's confusion, uncertainty, like even being in tune with ourselves, our higher self, our own spirit, our own intuition is a part of that, right?
Yeah, it's hard to get clarity around what you want to do and where you want to go if you don't know who you are already.
Yeah. So it first starts with knowing thyself, spending some time to get to know yourself, to understand yourself, and who are you? What are you doing here? Like all these big questions, and I don't know. I think it's something that people really need to understand about themselves. So,
And I think one of the reasons it's a good main focus is because, at least for me, I find my spirituality is a form of self-management.
mm-hmm.
It's a way,
And that's what it is.
and so knowing yourself and self-managing is, like, kind of impossible if you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage that which you do not know?
Exactly.
So at the beginning of any spiritual practice or setting rules for yourself for how to live, I feel like you can't overstate this one just because it's the one that people undernourish.
Yeah. They forget themselves
They forget themselves.
in the process of living this life. And I don't know, I just feel that's where all the problems start. That's where all the things go kind of haywire, when we're disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah, because then we end up blaming every external factor instead of taking the responsibility for ourselves.
Responsibility for your own soul.
Which can be a difficult thing to do, especially when you've gone through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it feels like all of this was put onto you. You're like, the last thing you would think is that taking responsibility for yourself is actually this empowering thing that enables you to have the strength to lift that weight.
Yeah.
So, okay, starting with yourself, I think that's a really great...
And, you know, knowing yourself and the experiences you've had, that's what makes you who you are, right? So sometimes when we go through difficult times, when we go through experiences that are uncomfortable, traumatic even, you know, it's in the moment when we're going through them, we feel everything that we're going through.
Yes.
But that's what builds us into who we are meant to become.
Yes.
But rather than letting them define us, because a lot of us do take on the weight of the things that we experience and we become that.
I couldn't agree more.
Right? So it's all about letting all of that go and allowing yourself to just be yourself and accept like everything that, is it really accepting? Yeah, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like I think that's the last step of getting to know yourself is the acceptance part.
Yeah.
Like once you know yourself, all the light and dark side, and going, okay, this is what I'm working with. These are my strengths, my flaws, my challenges, my benefits, my gifts, and accepting all of that.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, I'm a terrible person because of this one flaw. That self-acceptance is like super empowering because now it's like, okay.
Now there's nothing to fight with.
Exactly.
Now you're
so
not
much
fighting with
internal
yourself.
struggle gets ironed out because now it's like having your ego, your intuition, all that stuff all in alignment working together for your best interest. And so when I think of the higher self, I think of it as like this more benevolent version of me who's like trying to guide me to make the best decisions that result in the greatest good. And you know, there's always those things that are trying to compete with that voice.
That's right.
To either be negative self-talk or like just strange temptations or whatever, but they're all things that would get you off your path to guiding yourself towards wherever you want to go.
And what would you call that voice? That's your ego, right?
I think it's the ego. Yeah. It's like
it's a part of you. It's a part of you that wants to keep you comfortable and safe.
I almost feel like between the ego and the intuition, right, is selfishness and selflessness, and in the middle is where you're wanting to be, where that rational self-interest is, because then you've still got your individual self, your uniqueness, right?
That's right.
You have a self
and
to even get to know.
And that's what you want to be tuned into is your uniqueness, because that's your gift. That's you.
But you don't get so into the self that you fall in love with yourself and become like this selfish, self-obsessed, narcissistic person. That's the extreme of the ego. And then to me, the extreme of intuitive self would be like, and some people do appeal to this ideal, giving so much of yourself that there's nothing left of you, right? That your whole life becomes defined by your service to others. And that's the whole selfless idea. Yeah. And I guess that can be fulfilling, but
as long as you're feeling fulfilled in doing that, it's okay to do that. But if you're feeling drained and you're not feeling good and you're not receiving what you need from where you're giving your energy,
I think you're more effective when you do have your needs taken care of. So that's why I feel like going too far in the selfless direction almost results in a form of like self-neglect in the name of providing service to others.
Right, yeah.
And so that's where the rational side of the self-interest comes from, is that you're balancing between those two things, between what you need for yourself and what you want to do for others.
Correct. I agree with that. That is 100% what I believe. And I don't know, I feel sometimes people forget about themselves. We forget about ourselves in our day-to-day lives and don't come back to ourselves because we're so caught up in everything else that is going on in our lives. And
we want to change the world before we fix our house, and we want to fix our house before we fix ourselves.
I love that.
So know thyself, fix thyself, and the rest of these rules will be a lot easier to implement into your life.
And so how can one get to know themselves? How can someone come back to themselves? Because this is a question I get all the time.
Yeah, that's a great... Before we move on, I think, focusing on the fact that getting to know yourself is a process of introspection.
It takes effort.
It definitely takes effort and energy.
It
Sometimes
does,
it requires unpacking things and going into your layers, and a lot of times the deeper layers that you go can be a little more uncomfortable because it requires unearthing, things and events that might have helped shape who you are and what you feel. And looking at those things doesn't mean you become them or that you have to define yourselves by them, but it is part of the process. And so I think where you're trying to arrive at is, what do I believe in? What are my values and principles? Like, what do I stand for?
Yeah. You want to lay the solid foundations of you.
And what matters to me?
Right.
Right. At the end of the day, whether it's family or your career or whatever you choose, right? That's part of your uniqueness as an individual. It's about realizing whether this actually fulfills you or not, and then committing to it, and then living through that commitment.
That's right. And not being afraid to do that. That's the other thing. Fear is such a huge setback for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of judgment, fear of this, that, and the other thing, whatever the fear is. Fear is nothing but an illusion.
What do you do to fear?
I punch it in the face. Well, I mean, you can't just like actually punch it in the face.
I know what you're saying.
You have to set it
it's
aside.
It's a spiritual punch into its spiritual face.
Yeah, but it's something that we can feel and be with at the same time, because I feel like anytime I'm afraid, it's there. I know it's there, but I don't let it take the driver's seat in my life.
No, fear serves a purpose. Like the whole idea of fight or flight is so that if a saber-toothed tiger was running at you, you wouldn't stop to admire its shiny teeth.
No.
Your fight or flight would kick in your lizard brain and make you either square up to, like, I don't know, good luck with the saber-toothed tiger, or run away.
Yeah.
And I think that anxiety or cortisol or whatever it is that's driving us into those fight or flight modes, which some of us call like panic mode or panic attack, it's like you have to accept that feeling is coming from somewhere, and look beyond the feeling into the root of, why is this happening at this moment, right? And so that's about making, not just punching fear in the face, but making peace with the fact that you will feel fear from time to time.
Yeah.
But you don't have to live in the fear. You hold it as a feeling and decide, okay, I can chuck it back there and accept that it's there, as long as it serves a purpose. What you don't want is holding on to fear all the time
and
for no
drive
reason.
you.
And letting it drive you.
Drive you. It's
Drive
like,
you up the wall.
Take the driver's seat, and it's like, all right, you're in the back seat. I'm fear, and I'm going to take over, and we're going to ruin everything. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So having any one emotion rule your life can be quite difficult and limiting. So,
and this world is full of fear monger stuff, where like everything is like fear in your face.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the things about the fight or flight, freeze, flop kind of phenomenon, is when your unconscious mind or your lizard brain takes over, you're temporarily in this like more suggestible state.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times let's call them the public advertisers of things, would prefer you to be in a more fearful spot, because then it's easier to sell you products.
Exactly.
All right. So that is knowing thyself, knowing yourself. Number 2 is embracing challenges as opportunities.
Because that's exactly what they are.
So what would you like to speak to on that?
Well, challenges are there to build you into the version of you that you're meant to be on the other side of that challenge. And I always find that the more challenges we go through, and I don't know if any of you can attest to that, because there's many of us out there that have gone through many different challenges. I personally feel like it has actually got me to here today, where we are right now, facing our fears and going through challenges. Life is full of them. We're meant to actually face them and not, I know they can be scary in the moment depending on what the challenge is, but they actually make us stronger.
And that strength that comes from them serves you to embrace opportunities, or to even take advantage of opportunities, because say you had to develop a particular skill, or toughen up in some way because of some ordeals or some challenges or some adversity. And yes, it can be wounding and scarring and all these things. But on the other side of it, if you've developed an ability or a skill or a new perspective, that can suddenly serve opportunities that come down the road. And so then that challenge or that struggle, it wasn't pointless. You gained something in the longer term. So what kind of challenges have you seen in your life that turned into opportunities?
Well, I was in a 12-year cycle in my life where I had to go through a difficult time in my life. And I came out of that with patience. Like I had to be patient in situations, right? And that actually served me later in my life because when I started the new cycle after that 12-year cycle, I needed that patience. And I was so good with patience that it actually benefited me. Right? I don't know how else I can go deeper into that.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Okay.
I totally thought you were going to use
detail.
I thought you were going to use the example of during COVID when we were both out of work.
Oh, that's one example as well.
And started learning new skills like tarot and editing and all that stuff, and it led to tremendous opportunity, which is why we're talking right now. But I think your example is even more poignant because it's like at the root of your life. It's one of the earliest lessons you learned. And 12 years is a long time to invest in learning that lesson. But you're one of the most remarkably patient people that I know. And yet, once your patience has been evaporated, then it's very clear.
Then you better get out of my way.
But then you know what you're dealing with, and you're like, okay, this is a person with enormous patience who if it's run out, it's on rare occasion. But then you know it's like, okay, this is a serious thing. So it's good to know that. And
then COVID was one of the bigger ones as well, even though like it was huge, but it gave us an opportunity to, because we didn't have anything else going on, everything was shut down.
Yeah.
We were kind of in a space where, because we had nothing going on, the creative energy started to flow, and everyone in our home were just creative.
We decided we wanted to do something. Like we didn't just want to sit around and watch Netflix all day, which nothing wrong with that. But we just had this weird spark of ambition starts eating away, and we're all cooped up in a little apartment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, why don't we set up a green screen in here and film some stuff?
Yeah. So I don't know what experiences you've had out there with challenges, especially with COVID, and if it's brought changes into your life, how those challenges have shaped who you are, or how those challenges, not that they shaped who you are, who you became through those challenges. Because I remember when COVID hit, I had a mortgage and we had no paycheck coming in. So I was kind of like, oh my gosh, that's where the idea, I've always wanted to have a business, right? We've always wanted to do our own thing. We were not built to work the 9 to 5, right? We knew that from a long time ago in our lives. And this challenge, we were able to embrace it, and it just turned into something that we had already kind of visualized. We didn't know exactly what it was going to turn into.
That's right.
And it's kind of taken its shape now as what's happening.
I think that's one of the most fantastic examples of embracing a challenge and going, okay, well, what is the opportunity that arises out of this challenge? And you nailed it. It's all the adversity that comes to your life is kind of like a pressure system that I don't want to say forces you, but at the very least it coerces you into having to rise to the occasion to do a little bit better. And that pressure,
it's like diamonds.
Yeah, it's like squeezing coal.
Yeah.
Until that amount of pressure somehow diamondifies it.
Diamondifies it.
And to make up a word.
Yeah.
And you have this beautiful thing that's left over. And so as long as you don't give up, like from the challenge, because this is the thing is a lot of us get overwhelmed. We feel we're not equipped to handle the challenge. And so a lot of times that will lead us to like avoid challenges, which is also avoiding opportunities, unfortunately.
Or even like, people that have gone through challenges where they feel like they didn't come out winning, or feel like they went through something really tough and it's like traumatized them, and they're leaving with like
only negative things. Yeah.
Rather than strengths.
Yeah.
Right. But again, that's the perspective that you're looking at.
Well, because the wounds can be real, but it's a matter of going back to knowing thyself. Do you define yourself by your overcoming adversity, or by the fact that you faced adversity, or the fact you were a victim of adversity? These are all different ways to define yourself. But to me, the most empowering way is to be like, I got through something. I
Yeah.
got through pain.
Like,
I got through
this.
trauma. I got through suffering. And not celebrating the suffering, celebrating your tenacity and your
That's right.
ability to get through something. Because it's really exhausting to hold on to pain and anger and resentment from the past. You have
Yeah.
to carry them around like heavy luggage.
Yeah,
And
I can't do that for
knowing
very
that it's an
long,
option
yeah.
to just let it go and just leave it behind, and you're not going to lose anything, right? If anything, you gain the lightness, obviously, but the way to let go, I've always felt, is to go, what did I learn from this?
Exactly.
Like, how am I wiser now for future decisions so I don't have to experience that same pain again?
And just being like, whoa, I can't believe I just went through that. Like,
Yeah, give yourself a pat on the back
yeah.
for surviving whatever you're going through.
And you know, those challenges, like just like the coal and the diamond, is I always find that challenges or any kind of things that we face that are difficult, uncomfortable, or tough are us actually leveling up in consciousness. It's almost like you learn something from the experience, you gain a new perspective even, right? And just, I don't know how to explain it.
No, I think that's a really good analogy because, like, when I was a kid, I used to play these role-playing games.
Yeah.
And you basically walk around and you solve puzzles and you do quests and you fight monsters, and each thing is kind of a piece of adversity that you got to overcome, and you literally get gold and experience points for overcoming the adversity. And when you have enough gold, you can buy new things. When you have enough experience points, you unlock new skills.
Yeah.
And so it's just somewhat of a metaphor for life, right? You can run away, but you don't gain anything.
No, exactly.
So, even if you get hurt, even if you get injured, it's like, again, what's the lesson, right? If I slip on ice and hurt my ankle or crack my head or something, okay, I know in the future to be more careful on ice because I've learned the lesson of physics or whatever.
That's right.
And if I touch a flame, as a 3-year-old, because I was like, fire is pretty,
Like,
but I burned myself. Okay, that's a permanent lesson in my brain to go, oh wait, it's pretty, but it can hurt you, so better watch out.
Yeah.
And the only true pain and wounds end up being the ones that you don't learn the lesson from and then end up repeating over
That's
and
right.
over.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
In most cases, yes.
In most cases, yes.
So, yeah, life struggles, they really do hold the key to people's growth. And as they say, there is no growth in the comfort zone if you're too comfortable, but there's no comfort in the growth zone. So if you expect to grow, don't expect to be comfortable, because that's just not how it works.
And again, it takes effort.
Big time.
I just feel like sometimes we're so scared of the word effort. Some people, not everyone.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Right? And it's just like, oh, I have to put effort into this challenge now. I got to do this thing. And then after I'm over it, I still have to put effort and adjust to this new version of me after the challenge. Yes, we have to do that. It's the cold, hard truth.
Make peace with effort. It is energy, but it's energy that you own the expenditure of.
And you get to choose what kind of energy you want to put out there after, and choose how you want to go through a challenge too. You get to choose how you want to face that challenge.
100%.
Right?
It's your ability to respond, which is your
Exactly.
responsibility. Yeah, so one of the things that you mentioned in your piece was when challenges arise, the idea of asking yourself, what is this trying to teach me? What can I
That's a
learn from
huge
this
one, yeah.
experience? And that, I think, is what's going to equip you to tackle opportunities and turn those challenges into opportunities for the future.
And, anytime I've ever faced challenges, initially when the challenge shows up, I do freak out a little bit, but it's more of an internal freak out.
That's the reaction.
It's the reaction.
but
It's
you
the
can learn how to
natural.
contain it.
Yeah, but then you just breathe through it, calm yourself through it, and allow yourself time to see what's actually going on rather than reacting to it right away.
Cool.
Right?
Lovely. Well, let's move on to number 3, which is, of course, to listen to your feelings. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on...
It's the biggest indicator.
Yes.
Is your body. Is your biggest communicator to you. right? So if you're not feeling good, your feelings, they're real, they're valid. So whatever it is that you're feeling in a challenge, in any situation, your body's communicating with you and telling you what it needs. So a lot of times when I'm not in alignment with something,
Mm-hmm.
and my feelings are letting me know like, hey, this challenge showed up, I'm not in alignment because my body's communicating, telling me something, I know that, okay, let's take a look at this, let's listen to what's going on within me to see, okay, what's actually happening.
So when you say no, that makes perfect sense. I was going to say, when you say listen to your feelings, I feel like
Or feel your feelings,
like
sorry.
feel your feelings, that it's a nuanced thing that's not necessarily like your emotions,
Yeah.
right? Because your emotions are types of feelings like anger, sadness, happiness,
Yeah,
all
all
these things.
kinds.
But when you say listen to your feelings or feel your feelings, I feel like you mean the undescribable feelings, the
Right.
feeling of your body, your intuition, like does something feel right or is this giving you anxiety? And then part of the listening process is like the understanding process, which comes from the why.
Yeah, and a lot of times the feelings come from the thoughts or what we're seeing, what's being given to us, incoming energy, right?
Kind of like the idea that your core beliefs are the like at the center of what like how you act, because
Mm-hmm.
your core beliefs then form your thoughts, which form your feelings, which then influence your actions.
Correct.
And so listening to your feelings is more than just like, I feel sad, I am sad now, I must do sad things, or I am angry, I must do angry things. It's that's not what you're talking about when you say listen to your feelings. You're talking about the
I'm
introspection.
saying actually listen to your feelings rather than reacting to them. So when we are feeling emotions, it's like, okay, I'm feeling this thing right now. I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad, and to be more like an observer. And that's something that you have to practice to learn to do if you're not someone that does that. So, like doing breathing exercises and giving yourself a moment to just feel the feelings and allow them to pass. So, usually like 90 seconds of breathing,
Yeah.
but stepping outside of yourself. And again, that's something that
Is it like a level of detachment?
it is, yes. You kind of have to detach yourself from the situation in order to look at it properly, even like your emotions and your feelings, right?
So like when you're detaching, is it almost like the emotions are a phone booth and you're just stepping out of the phone booth for a
Yes,
second to
that's
look at
exactly what it
yourself
is.
feeling the feeling in the phone booth, but because you've stepped out, you're kind of like detached, removed from, not completely, just from like
Okay, the situation, so you're
either
not
the ego or the
reacting to
intuition.
it.
I gotcha. So you're almost containing the reaction
That's
through
right.
that response of stepping out or detaching temporarily, and you're not denying the
No,
emotion,
you're not denying
right?
it. You're definitely
You're
feeling
becoming
it.
an external observer. It feels like.
Correct. That's exactly how it goes.
Okay, that
It's,
sounds really good.
yeah. I feel like it works. For me, it
Yeah.
works. And people I've spoken to, it works, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just stepping outside of yourself for just a moment and allowing it's like you got to just calm down. I
Yeah.
think calming yourself, grounding your energy, and then going back to it.
And asking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What is this
Yes, that's,
indicative of? Like, what am I supposed to be knowing right now? Because I feel like you can get washed away by your
you
emotions
totally
and
can.
get drowned by them, and it's easy to wallow in them. Some emotions feel more like quicksand.
And the longer you hold on to them, for some, they become a comfortable place to be. It's like a warm, cozy blanket that you just carry around.
Like familiarity
Yeah.
wise. Yeah, familiar sadness.
Familiar
Or
sadness,
yeah.
or even if you're tuned into that, right? It's again that perspective that you wear. Again, that perspective is the cozy blanket of being in that emotional state because you don't know anything else. It's kind of like a habit that you create through the emotions, right? So,
So having a better connection to your feelings, right? Where you're not being ruled by them or they're not taking the driver's seat all the
or even
time,
feeling shameful of them.
right? Which a lot of people have that put upon them to
I
be
feel like
ashamed.
judgments. I remember when I was younger, any kind of emotion I felt, or my body would communicate with me through my feelings. It's almost like you can't even share them. I felt I couldn't share them because I
Yeah.
was going to be judged.
That's huge. Yeah, shame and
That's a big
judgment
one.
are weaponized often to control
Yeah.
people's ability to express their emotions. And I've also been in like conversations where it's turns into a bit of a debate about facts of the matter or whatever, and then someone will interrupt the conversation to invoke a comment about my emotional state.
Yeah.
Be like, whoa, you seem like you're getting upset or whatever. And I'm like, what does that have to do with the conversation?
Yeah.
That seems more like a deflection. But it's like kind of all right to police your own emotions to an extent in terms of like the response versus reaction thing.
Yeah.
But policing other people's emotions, if they make you uncomfortable, is kind of like, oh, I don't know.
Then your emotions are telling you something if you're uncomfortable, right?
Well, exactly. So it's like, again, what is this feeling trying to tell me?
Yeah.
Or what is this person with this feeling really trying to tell me versus what I'm hearing? Because emotion a lot of times clouds what we want to actually say.
Yeah. And miscommunication when
Yeah.
someone doesn't understand what's actually being said.
Or when someone says something and then they go, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but you did.
Yeah. And then communicating,
Yeah.
right? So I feel your emotions can give you a lot of information about you.
I love that how this, it all ties back to knowing thyself,
It goes back to knowing thyself. That's why that's the first one.
right? The key number one rule. Well, that's great. I think that it feels like there's a logical order to these 10 rules that kind of like
Yeah. And they all kind of go back
stack
to
on top
knowing
of each other.
thyself.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a pyramid of rules that are good for yourself. Well, okay. So number 4, you've got focusing on small wins. And I feel like that's a really good method of coping with challenges, or say you're feeling there's an insurmountable challenge and you're like, there's no way I'm going to do this. The idea of focusing on small wins is like, I made my bed, I emptied the dishwasher, I did some laundry, like little achievable things that you've done dozens, if not hundreds of times, that nothing's really going to get in your way.
Yeah.
And if you do those small wins, you get the little dopamine reward or whatever, and it puts you in the better mood and it remotivates you. And sometimes you come back to that big insurmountable project with renewed energy.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I feel like sometimes I've seen, people that get up and they're making their bed, unloading the dishwasher and doing all these things. These are small wins, but they're like, oh, just had to do this thing and all, and it's like, no, you did this thing. Give yourself a pat on the back. That's actually a small win, right? Again, it's that perspective. And
so like the purpose behind the small wins is like, we've always got a task list of things we'd like to achieve like in life, and then we got the smaller task list of like, oh, I got to take out the garbage, I got to go shopping for groceries, I got to make sure I pick up the kids, or whatever small tasks that are like usually under an hour, under half an hour.
Yeah.
Could be vacuuming the house, like whatever. But they're kind of really achievable. They're stuff we put off, but if you do them, you kind of feel good. You're like, oh, I'm glad that's off my list. And they're not insurmountable. And so it's just my opinion. I feel like if you're feeling unmotivated, demotivated, or you're facing some grand task, sometimes it's good to like take a step back, go do a few smaller tasks that are very achievable.
Yeah. And
you sort of start to build up the momentum cycle again of feeling good. Okay, I'm getting stuff done. Okay, maybe now I can go take a look at that, doing my taxes or whatever is difficult thing you want to do, and like go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so do you have any other like small wins you can think of that are like ways to achieve just like a little ping of satisfaction?
I don't know. I always feel that, getting things done in my day, getting, for me personally, it's like, all right, I did that batch of readings this week. I'm so proud of myself. Now I can go and enjoy a hot chocolate.
Nice. Even a hot chocolate's a little win.
Exactly.
As well, right?
It's like, oh, I did so good. Let's order a Starbucks today. Right? Like I feel good, ticking off the boxes and really giving yourself credit.
Yeah. I feel like getting stuff done is like a little reward.
Yeah.
Like the accomplishment itself is the reward. You don't always get like a prize at the end. And some of it's stuff that you have to do every week. But if you frame it in your mind, as like a, yeah, I did that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
And you're like, with every little undeniable effort, you can give yourself a pat on the
A pat on
back.
the back, yeah.
And because you did that, and no one, once you've done something, no one can take it away, the fact that you did it.
Exactly.
And so little wins, I feel like, are
Little itty
a big
bitty wins
deal.
are a big deal. The big ones are a big deal, but the little ones add up to the big ones, right? They lead you to the big ones.
Yeah. And also when facing bigger goals, sometimes you can break them down into smaller
Goals,
tasks.
yeah.
And then getting those little tasks, getting 1/3 of your little tasks that add up to the big goal done, those are little wins that add up to a big win.
Yeah. And like even a small thing, like say, for example, you wanted to wake up early one day, or you wanted to start waking up early at 6 a.m., 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
You get up early and it's like, you know what? Good. Good for you for doing that.
That's
for
true.
getting up 5 a.m. and doing this thing that you said you were going to do.
Exercising any form of self-discipline deserves some pats on
Yeah.
the back, because that's actually living self-respect.
And I feel like a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit. We're kind of just like on autopilot, going about our day, doing all these things and not being present,
Yeah.
taking notice of how much we've actually accomplished throughout our day.
You're right, actually. If we are putting in the effort,
Yeah.
then we do deserve the credit. I agree.
Right. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you have breakfast, you go to work, you drive home. That's an accomplishment, I think.
Yeah, even though it starts to feel like routine, I think keeping up with your routine,
Yeah.
I think it's because it becomes mundane and loses its specialness to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's exactly
And so
what
that's where the
happens.
idea of gratitude and all that, but that's a whole other set of rules for living.
That's another podcast.
So for number 5, you have put intention into everything you do. And the idea that the energy put into your actions affects what energy you get back.
Exactly.
So would you like to expand on that?
Yeah. So if you're setting your day up to do something, like you have a goal set for the day, setting that intention and working towards it, and then having that small win through that day is such a huge uplifting energy. And it puts us in a vibration that allows us to, again, know thyself and really connect, I guess, with the energy of abundance, I would say.
Yeah, well, if that's the intention you're coming at something with, I guess I always took.
An intention is more like a goal, right?
Well, I always took it as like the preparation.
The intention as a preparation.
When we're programming an intention candle, you kind of want to have something in your mind
Yeah.
that you've already visualized beforehand, that's been something that's been on your mind, because then you've got a clearer image of what you want.
Yeah.
And so like anytime I show up to film sets, the rule is 80% preparation, 20% execution.
Okay.
And that's
yeah.
because they expect everyone to show up with the intention of, we're doing this, we're all looking out for each other. It's like the crew of a ship,
Yeah.
right? And everyone's kind of got each other's back, because you all want to produce the best thing, right? You don't want your own individual efforts to go to waste because someone else showed up but put in super low effort, which then by association brings down everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like the idea of showing up with putting intention into everything you do
It's so important.
it's so important, because it's the difference between showing up prepared and showing up not prepared.
And, for us today, our intention is to bring some information that actually helps some of you navigate through 2025, right?
Yep.
That's the intention we have set, to bring some sort of energy here for all of you to connect with and hopefully bring you guidance in your own life.
Yeah, I think this is just like one of many podcasts we'll do
Yeah.
on different types of guidance. And because you spent quite a bit of time putting together your list, and then
Yeah.
like really thinking about like
what do I need to put in there?
and like
Just-
why are these important for this
Yeah.
year specifically? Because I know there's social changes, there's shifts in power,
All
there's
kinds of
shifts in
things that are
energies.
happening right now in the world.
And so I felt that the 10 that you listed here are really the foundational ones,
Yeah.
like the real base of the pyramid kind of thing. If you're going to build on top, you don't want to build on quicksand.
Yes.
You want to build on a solid foundation of like granite and concrete.
It's like
and,
laying those solid foundations through knowing thyself.
right?
And
Well,
then it kind of
all
goes,
back to
back
that,
to the
yeah.
pyramid, right? Yeah.
But the idea of putting intention into everything you do is like a level of considerateness
Yeah.
and preparation and forethought. And really what it comes down to is effort in thinking about what you actually want,
Yeah.
right? Here's the thing, if you're doing things without intention, without like motive driving it,
Yeah.
then what are you really doing it for, right?
Exactly.
You might be doing it for someone else's intention or guidance or motives and not even realize it because you're along for the ride. But when you take time to visualize your own intentions and you put that towards your goal, now you've got a clarity of
Yeah,
thought
the clarity
that
comes
allows
in,
you
yeah.
to show up and be laser focused on what it is that needs to be done. Whereas without intention, you're just showing up going, okay, somebody tell me what to do.
Yeah. So intention is kind of like having a vision, right? Having an idea, or what would you call it? A goal as well. An intention would be just, how's
It's like a
another
driving
way?
motivation.
Yeah.
It's like, but it literally breaks down to what do you intend to
Yeah.
do?
What do you intend to do? And then when you're taking those action steps, when you have an intention, I always find that I start taking the action and everything kind of falls into place when I have an intention.
Yeah.
But
It's
when
like a
I
map
don't,
almost.
it is. It kind of, this map begins to appear and you seem to be able to navigate a little bit better. But when we don't have an intention, when we're not prepared
Yeah.
or don't know what we're doing, then anything can happen, really.
Which sometimes spontaneity births amazing things.
It does.
You know what I mean? Like improv, when we're doing improv
yes.
comedy. But you're still coming at it with the intention,
With the
which is called
intention.
yes and.
Yes, and
Right? So again, I think, coming with an intention allows you to have focus. Showing up without intention means usually a lack of focus, and you will not always be productive. Sometimes you'll spin your wheels, and instead of being the author of your own novel, you will be like, am I a character in someone else's novel? What's going on here?
right. And setting an intention, sometimes we set an intention, we have this vision, this, idea in our minds to do this thing. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way, right?
It doesn't happen exactly
Exactly
how
that way.
we mapped it out.
Exactly. And sometimes we're not meant to know how it's supposed to exactly happen, but we have that intention there, knowing we're going to get there, right? Sometimes we're not meant to know the path.
I feel like it's like when you draw out a map
Yeah.
and you're taking the one or two best paths that you think, but we're not aware of the mountain paths or the underground paths or through along the river. These other paths, they exist. They're just not super obvious to us. And so while you may intend to take the highway path, life can throw some curveballs and be like, oh, landslide,
Yeah.
block the highway now. And then you're like, well, I guess I got to find a canoe and take the river because I got to get to my destination. So that flexibility in building your intention, I think, allows you to pivot when the path you're on to the destination you want to be going to suddenly
Has a curveball.
a
Or
curveball, a
something else that
barrier,
gets in the
something you
way,
got to
yeah.
overcome. Yeah. Then you don't get thrown off your course.
Yeah.
So number 6, I think, is a really important one that doesn't get enough focus in our high technology world, especially since I am the screen master in this house. But spending less time on screens and more time living life.
And I know that's hard for some.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're on screens quite a bit, but we are working, so we need to be on screens. We're talking more about time that is spent on screens when you can be more productive.
Or consuming junk food media.
Yeah,
because
junk
there's a
food
difference between watching, cute cat videos, you get a nice feeling out of it, watching people falling on ice and getting knocked off bridges. Okay, daily dose of internet. Okay.
It's okay to have like a little bit of internet if that's what you enjoy. If it's bringing you enjoyment,
Yes.
that's one thing. But if you're not feeling good because you're comparing yourself to someone, or you're feeling a certain way because you heard some world news and all this information, again, that is something that maybe we need to detach from for a little bit, or take a detox from, and just get outside. Get away from that screen and get outside.
Go touch some grass.
Go hug a tree.
And I think that's a really great point, Rhea, is that if you find yourself compulsively scrolling, doom scrolling, or trying to change your emotional state through the use of your screens, then that is in itself an indicator that you need to unplug for a bit.
Yeah.
And go for a nature walk, call a friend, just because I think what can happen is it's like a screen literally takes your field of view from 180 degrees and turns it into like a really narrow focus.
Yeah.
And you can almost get like a tunnel vision of stimulation, let's call it.
Overstimulation.
Well, big time. Like, especially scrolling, like, remember our primitive caveman brains are only several thousand years old, or millions, depending on what you believe. And this phenomenon of like smartphones and screens is less than 20 years in terms of how much time we spend.
Yeah, we're addicted to our phones. I don't know anyone that can just let go of their digital screen and just put it aside for a moment. Not very many people can do that, right?
And because it's like a black mirror of emotional stimulation, it's literally a portal that we look into that
It really
causes
is.
different forms of emotional stimulation, and everything from anger to joy to crying, and it's all contained in a little box
Yeah.
that connects to this other realm that serves up all this content. And so we're not saying stop watching us, because we consider ourselves nutritious, nourishing content, but either taking some time away from screens, turning on the feature that lets you know how much of your screen you're using each day,
Yeah.
to remind yourself like, hey, maybe I should cap it at an hour or two, and making sure that you're not like ignoring people you care about to spend more time in front of screens, whether that's phones, video games, whatever.
Yeah, like if you're going for dinner with someone or you're trying to be present with another person, but the phone's in the way.
That's
The phone
a
is
great
a
point.
wedge
Yeah.
between a relationship. And when you actually take a look at the phone, it's a black screen. I always think of it as the black hole that sucks us into it, and then we're gone for I don't know how long.
Until you come back.
Until you come back, like 2-3 hours later. I don't know if any of you tend to go on TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube Shorts. You know how everything's now getting less and less.
Our attention span.
Our attention
It's down
span.
to a
It's
minute or
like
less.
just ruining it.
Yeah, it's almost like people, the more you condition yourself to screen usage, especially for short form content, I feel like the more you're creating a compulsive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Where you're not fully engaged in the present thing because your mind is going, well, go to the next thing, maybe it's better. Go to the next thing, maybe it's better. And that can manifest in, like, imagine having a one-to-one conversation with someone you haven't seen for a while, and they keep like looking down at their phone, or they keep going, hold on a second, or like you're asking them an important question and somebody texts
They're
them and they just
distracted.
completely tune out whatever you just said. And they're like, oh, I got a text in. So not present at all, attention divided between multiple things, which means you can't give 100% attention to any one thing, which can be detrimental for relationships, for your job. 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, it was very rare that someone would be on their phone at their job.
It was considered rude.
Or like you'd get written up for it because it's like
Exactly.
on company time, right? And now it's kind of like accepted that like in between tasks, people will just hop on their phone to see what's new on X or Instagram or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so ubiquitous now that a lot of employers are just like, whatever, as long as you get your work
They
done.
can't actually control it.
No.
Right? Because everyone needs to have their phone beside them all the time. And it's why?
In the next 20 years, the euphemism of the old ball and chain will be replaced by the old phone and charger.
Yeah.
All right. So that was
And
great.
that goes back to, again, emotions and feelings. You want to make sure you're tuning into your emotions and feelings when you are the digital, on the phone, or because I feel a lot of times that's what causes a lot of the emotions and the feelings of not feeling good,
Of unworthiness.
of unworthiness,
Yeah.
of anxiousness, of stress.
You
a
have
lot.
to ask yourself, if I didn't have this and I didn't have access to this realm where I'm intaking all this content, would I be feeling the same way that I feel right now? Mm-hmm. Right? Would I be making these comparisons or be reminded what I don't have or whatever it is? like, and so if the answer is no, I wouldn't be feeling that, then you have to ask, like, am I creating a dependency
Yeah.
by going back to this thing? Because it's not the phone itself that's addictive, it's the habit of getting an emotional stimulation or dopamine hit or serotonin or whatever from that device.
Yeah.
That your brain's like, well, could always use another hit of that, and then it goes back.
I always find like turning the phone to silent is probably the best, especially at work, because sometimes the sound of the dings, even like, I don't know if any of you feel you hear a
Conditions
ding
us.
or you're like waiting for someone to respond. It's like you're just kind of checking it right away, and it's like creating this emotion.
Yeah, it's called a Pavlov response.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that if you ring a bell before a dog's dinner, the dog will come expecting dinner each time because you give it dinner with the bell. Eventually, you don't have to have dinner there. You can just ring the bell, and the dog will come because it associates dinner with the bell. So that's kind of how we are with texts and little bleepy notifications.
Yeah. Did we do number 3?
Yeah, we sure did. Number 3 was listening to your feelings.
Okay, that was feelings. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know why that kept coming up. Number 3, I'm like, what was number 3? So feelings, emotions tied to digital devices.
100%.
Right?
I feel like these are all kind of interlinked.
Yeah.
Like you were really thoughtful in assembling this list. So spending less time on screens, more time in life, and real, genuine connections versus, we work around screens all day. So at the end of the day, we can't wait to get off them and just have
we're going to get off the screen.
Rhea and Paul analog time. So I think this is one of the most important, actually, with all those 6 rules as a foundation. That number 7 is be ready for change.
That's right.
So when you say be ready for change, what kind of preparation are you talking? Emotional, mental, spiritual?
All of it. I feel all
Physical.
of it, mostly emotional, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are afraid of change. We sometimes become afraid before change even happens, just feeling the change coming in. Some of us feel that, okay, there's change coming in, and then we just get into this. I know a lot of people that in my own life that sometimes there is no change, but they can sense the change is coming, and then there's this like emotion and apprehension. So I guess creating healthy balance or a relationship with change is probably something that we want to work on.
Like accepting that change is inevitable. Yes.
Change is inevitable. And if you can create a healthy relationship with change, the better you will do with your life. Because change, again, is inevitable. It's going to happen. It happens all the time. It happens in nature every season, right? So
4 times a year.
4 times a
generally,
year.
depending on where you live.
Yep. So it's just like that. We go through these changes, cyclical changes, other kind of changes in our lives. And the more we can embrace the change and not be afraid of it, the more we will find ourselves growing and thriving in life.
Yeah, I think change can be hard for a lot of people because it takes what's familiar and certain and shakes it up. It creates new uncertainty, unfamiliarity. It's like moving from one city on one side of the earth, the planet or the country to another city and not having friends, not knowing anyone. That's a huge change.
That's a big change, yeah.
But what starts off as a drawback can lead to a lot of opportunity if you recognize that the change breeds opportunity. It literally creates a new slate where you can reinvent yourself, make new friends, find a new job. And so even a change in circumstances, like I've had times where I lost a job and I was like, I needed this job. I got to pay my rent. It was really important to me. But then like a couple months down the road, a way better opportunity came along. And so what I thought was super crappy happening in the moment needed to happen to lead me to this better opportunity that I would never have even recognized if I hadn't been canned in the first place.
Yeah. So that change for you was a blessing in disguise.
And that's a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times change comes, or blessings, I should say, come in the form of what seems like a negative change at the time. And so with Rule 7, I feel like being ready for change is like emotional preparation, that essentially if a change happens that I'm not into or that seems bad on the surface, if I give it enough time, I can potentially find some positive revelation or some opportunity that comes out of that.
Right.
But it's up to me to seek that out. If I just stay resentful towards the change and closed off to even looking for those new opportunities, well, then I don't really have anyone to blame but myself for the opportunities that miss me and fly by.
So being open to change. And again, it goes back to knowing thyself. Like, how are you showing up in that change? How are you embracing that change? Are you resisting it, or are you trying to control it? All of these things that are a part of it, right?
Like, how much power do you actually have in those situations to control the change versus adapt to it?
Yeah. This is where we're shapeshifters. We're able to...
Emotional shapeshifters. Because we don't let change get us down. And I think our philosophy, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, has been to seek change because we're approaching it with intention.
Yeah.
And change driven by intention is a lot of times driven or drives you to new opportunities. Like, we're no longer in an apartment, we're in a nicer house.
Yeah. And we know change is coming because we're now planning a change in our lives.
Yeah.
And the changes allow you to grow. It's growth. Change is growth if you think of it like that.
Yeah, imagine you wouldn't want to stay in a baby body the whole time you're alive. You have to change and grow into a child, and then into a teenager, and then into an adult.
Yeah.
And you unlock new capabilities, but you also have to take on additional responsibilities. That's just a natural process of most living organisms on the planet. So there's no justified reason to be resentful towards that, and circumstances will change. So the more you can roll with the changes, the more you'll keep rolling, and the more you resist and fight the changes, the more resistance and fighting you'll encounter.
I love that.
Right on. We are just rocking and rolling along, just about to pass our 1 hour mark. So this is a significant high value podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying. Number 8, I think is very nice. It's about taking time to reflect. Mm-hmm. And so what kind of purpose do you see in, say setting aside 10 minutes each week to just like reflect on your progress and realign your goals?
It's just to see where you're at, how you're feeling, and just to reconnect back with yourself. Really, it's coming back to the present moment, releasing yourself from the past, the future, from everything that's going on in your life. Again, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe there's something going on and you haven't checked in with yourself. Maybe you've been on an autopilot all week. Mm-hmm. And you haven't come back to yourself. Maybe you've had a headache and you don't know why, and you're feeling certain ways. So coming back to yourself and just giving yourself that time to just reflect and see where you're at and see, okay, where am I at? What do I need to change right now? What is going on in my life? Am I still in that, on that path that I set an intention around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically a stopping point, like a pit stop.
I like that.
It's a pit stop
to check in.
Yeah.
That's great. I like car analogies work really great.
Yeah.
So, and I also feel like the reflection is like, is there anything I need to see that I'm not seeing?
Yeah. Is there anything I need to change?
Or develop or upgrade?
Is there something am I learning something from this situation?
Mm-hmm. So healthy self-reflection, I think the key to it is being honest with yourself. And again, brutal honesty is not always comfortable, but like there's no point in lying to yourself if you want to make genuine improvement in your life. So doing a reflection, if you look in a mirror and you don't like what you see, is it the mirror's fault? Or do you need to make peace with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So I think taking the time to reflect is when you do like energy check-in,
it's a powerful practice.
It's super powerful because it's how you learn, it's how you know where you're at on the journey. Like, what path am I on
Yeah.
to the destination? Am I still going to the same destination? And the reason it's so great is because if you don't do that,
Yeah.
a lot of times you go off in wild directions and do wild things that you weren't even aware of the motivations behind it.
And it takes you back to thyself.
It
Right? It goes
100%.
right back to thyself. Right? It's like, okay, let's go back to who I am. Am I resonating with this energy that I'm in?
Yep.
And again, everything we just talked about, like, okay, how are my emotions? What am I feeling? Where am I going? Do I need to adjust? Does this tire need to be changed? Do I need to top up my gas tank? All of that.
Yeah, at the pit stop, checking the
pit stop,
gauges.
yes.
Where's to get that? Again, you use such great analogies because it's like, I always use computer analogies, and you're like, cars, that's what I'm into. Cars. So, well, I think that's great. Like, when you take time to reflect, say you had an important meeting or a first date, that's where you can take that time to be like, hey, not to neuroticize it, not to be like, oh, I should have done this.
No, you don't want to do that.
But to be like, genuinely, like, what could I have done better? What could I have said or done that would have improved that experience? And it's like an honest self-check-in, not beating yourself up, not being judgmental towards yourself.
Is that after the date?
Yeah, like
If it went bad,
sober appraisal.
or if it went
went
good.
bad or good.
Yeah,
I mean,
both
I
times,
tend to
yeah.
learn more from my failures than from my successes.
I'm the same. I'm like, oh,
So
what happened there?
I'm more prone to do internal reflection if something went bad out of a preventative desire to like not have that happen again.
Yeah.
Usually when something good happens, you don't want to look too deeply into it because you want to be like, oh, this is all me, right? It's not because of other things. If you start doing reflection, you might be like, oh, it wasn't because of me the good thing happened.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we tend to reflect upon bad things.
I always find that a really good time to reflect is when you're beating yourself up.
Like, in order to stop yourself from beating yourself up?
Yeah, it's like when you are aware that, okay, I'm beating myself up because, oh, the date went really bad. It's all my fault, and I shouldn't have said this, and had it went this way and the other thing, right?
Yeah.
Instead, like, take a deep breath in and let's reflect. Let's see what how does I don't know. I'm different.
It helps you get it helps you get a more accurate picture
of what
really happened. Right? You're trying, again, it goes back to stepping outside yourself, right? Sometimes you're looking in the mirror and the reflection you see is kind of warped because you're seeing it through the prism of your own biases.
Yeah.
And the self-reflection is about trying to step outside your own biases, which is super hard.
It is,
like, because our egos, it's like, nope, I'm right. And the bias, the confirmation biases too, are like, they serve so many false positives for when you're talking crap on yourself, right? And so, yeah, if you have that reflection and you're soberly honest, then you give yourself the criticisms, but you give yourself the credit.
And then setting an intention as you're going into that date, saying, you know what, I'm not expecting anything to happen. I'm going to have a really good time and enjoy myself and see where it goes.
And then reflecting on, hey, I made the right choice by lowering the stakes in my own mind.
It's all connected.
Well, a lot of times people, the stakes are super high, and it's why? It's because something in the past happened.
Yeah.
And they're like really afraid of repeating it, but they haven't quite figured out what the lesson was to avoid it. They haven't done enough reflection. And so for number 9, you actually had let go of the past as the 9th rule. And reading comments with you, I noticed that a lot of people, this seems to be the big struggle, is like your parents did something to you, an ex did something to you, your own kids did something to you, and it's like such a massive betrayal or such a massive wound that people are like, how can you expect me to let this go?
Especially work situations too.
Just everything, but the nature of the wound, the nature of the trauma, people are like almost incensed, like I don't say insulted by the idea of letting go, but they're like, it's almost like a suitcase that's like
baggage
grown
that carrying. It's
a part
heavy.
of them.
Yeah.
Now my arm is a suitcase. You're telling me to chop off my arm, and you're like, that's that's not what you're saying.
No.
Do you want to express more about letting it go?
Well, yeah, because when you're talking about carrying that baggage and it kind of going up your arm, a lot of times when we're not letting go, releasing that energy, it manifests into something that could physically affect us, like a physical ailment.
Yep.
Like pains, headaches, whatever that is that you're feeling, right? So it's a huge part of
Emotional resilience.
yeah, it's just a big weight that you don't want to be carrying.
Yeah. Well, and so we've established kind of like letting go is not easy,
No, it's not.
but it's super valuable. It creates new room for fresh energy to come in. It lightens the load of baggage so you don't feel like you're walking around with so much weight on your shoulders. But I think the biggest thing is people go, well, how? I know why I should be letting go. How do I let go?
Yeah.
And so what do you find is a good strategy?
It's different for everyone because it depends on what you're carrying. Like, is it a grudge? Is it someone someone said something to you, so you're holding on to words, or someone did something to you, right? I usually just, I'm kind of different. I'm like able to detach myself from it after a little bit and I'll carry it with me. Like just release it and let it go. A lot of times writing, journaling, writing the whole situation down and how you were feeling, writing the person a letter even helps, right? To let go of that. There's so many different ways that you can release and let go, and you have to find one that works for you. But how would you?
Sometimes, I mean, you can have a confrontation in your mind
Yeah.
that you don't want to get stuck in a loop of confrontation. But I think writing a letter, like getting out all your feelings, externalizing how you feel without the person being able to cut you off or interrupt is very valuable, because then you really can focus on exactly how you feel and what you want to say and how you want to express that.
And the beauty of writing is you can just word vomit. Sometimes what I feel is I can't explain it or say it. I just vomit the words out, and it doesn't even make sense, but it releases a lot of energy. You're transferring that energy of weight and chaos in your mind because of a situation, and you're transferring it to that sheet of paper.
Out through the pen or the typing. Yeah. And that's what you're trying to do, to externalize that agitated energy. And like once it's outside of yourself, then it is a little easier to let go.
Yeah.
But when it's inside you, knocking around, then you're just like, how do I deal with this, right? And so one of the ways that I found works pretty well for letting things go so that you can move on is trying to put yourself into the situation, but from another perspective, from another person's shoes.
Another way to do that,
because I find if I'm most haunted by the bad things that happen where I don't understand why it happened.
Yeah.
Where I have no sense of understanding. I'm just like, why? Why did that happen? And so it kind of haunts you. As soon as you have given yourself some kind of why, whether it's magical thinking, critical thinking, whatever it is, a sense of understanding, why did this happen, that satisfies you, for some reason it's a lot easier to let go, because then you're like, oh, that had a purpose, that had a point.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't know why, and it seems like maybe that was pointless, like this car accident hit me or something, you're like, why did that happen? Like what am I trying to learn from this? And you don't have a lesson, then that's gonna be, your brain's gonna keep that active in its mental RAM, because finding the purpose goes or serves the lesson and says, okay, there was a point to that pain. Now you can let it go, because you don't need to keep trying to hold on to it to search through it to find the lesson.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of if you search through your pain, your traumatic experiences, your adversity, but you either learned something from it, you gained some wisdom, you became a better person, you became a smarter person, you increased your intellectual self-defense or your emotional self-defense. Those are all wins that come out of that pain. And then, to me, the logical conclusion is, okay, well, if I got some wins out of that pain, it's now less painful.
Yeah, to carry that.
So I might as well just put it down and let it go.
I like that. And another way to do it is, especially for those of us that have a really hard time letting go, is to channel it into something different, like into something productive, into
Yes.
something creative, right? I've seen people who have written their story and published it, or even just written their story for themselves,
Yep.
or turned it into music, into poetry, right? Baking, even. Like you could channel it into something different because now you're releasing and letting it go. And a lot of times it can turn into a win-win situation because, you know, you could turn your pain into songs and all of a sudden you find that you're now a music artist, right?
Yeah, or turn your story, which could be a painful story, into a YouTube video with like
Yeah.
written word, like what's her name?
Tiara.
Tiara. And that starts a whole new chapter in your life, right? Because you've decided to get vulnerable, express this thing, and then it is a form of letting it go,
It
right?
is.
You're not,
It really is.
it's like people practice forgiveness, but the people who are resistant to forgiveness, they're like, I don't want to forget about that. And it's like, it's forgive, not forget.
Yeah, you don't have to forget it. But forgiveness is a really good practice, especially with letting go.
Well, because forgiveness is about accepting your story, not forgetting your story.
Yeah.
So you just have to give yourself forgiveness
Yeah.
and also the other people in your life, because a lot of times they don't always know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like forgiveness is a gift you give yourself
It
to
is,
accept
yeah.
things and let go so that you can move on a little lighter, a little healthier.
Yeah. And when we carry weight, emotions, all kinds of things, I always find that the only person it hurts is the person carrying it.
Yes. If you're bitterness and resentment, carrying it around is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer the consequences from it.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you do that to yourself?
And a lot of times when we carry baggage, when we carry weight and don't let go, it's because we're focusing on it. And when we're focusing on something, that's the energy we're creating. So we're now, everything around us is confirming
That's right.
confirming it all for us. Like,
Yep.
oh, see, look at this. This happened. I told you. That's because of something from the past.
To reinforce it for
Yeah,
us. It's like the
so-
self-fulfilled prophecy.
Exactly.
And when does that happen the most? When you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you truly know yourself, you know that you don't want to define yourself by your pains, traumas, adversity. You want to define yourself, at least in a more healthy way, from the position of having overcome or survived or endured those things,
Yeah.
and come out the other side not defined by those things.
Right?
But I feel like I'm someone who's come out the other side and had to realize that in hindsight, that when you're going through it, it's not obvious. Even when people come up to you and give you that perspective, you're like, that's not really useful right now. I'm going through some stuff.
Yeah.
But afterwards, and for the future, that's when it's very handy to understand and recognize the value in letting go of it.
I consider it light. You know, when you go through something,
Yeah.
it's a part of your light that you can share with others. It's like, yo, I went through this thing and I can give you advice on it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, channeling it into something that you can share with the world as something creative, right?
Yeah. Like your anger and frustration can be channeled into artwork, paintings.
Or going to the gym and really getting
Yeah. Taking that
fit.
aggression out. When I get frustrated, I tend to clean
You
things.
do, yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm going to take this energy and put it somewhere that I can look back at the end and go, oh, I'm glad I did that.
Wow, the kitchen's so clean
And
today.
give myself some small wins. Turn my frustration into small wins. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not so frustrated anymore. It's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So that leads us to a very last of the 10 rules. And this conversation's just flown by.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I've only been sitting here for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Trust life's timing.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you, trusting life's timing? Because I feel like time's the most valuable currency.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes we put constraints on ourselves due to timing. Like we want something a certain way, or sorry, by a certain time. Your age might be a factor that is, you know, not allowing you to do something that you've been wanting to do, or expecting something at a certain time. You know, I'm 30 years old. I should have had a baby by now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or I'm
100%.
70 years old. I can't start again. I can't start a business.
Like an arbitrary timeline
Yeah.
where
So
you
it's
think you're
like,
supposed to have a house by 25,
yeah.
2 kids by 35, and be retired at 45.
Yeah.
And it's like, who came up with that?
Yeah. Who came up with that? So we have to trust that everything is happening in divine timing.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we explain that?
Perfect example. Us.
Yeah.
We met when we were both at the age of 40.
Yes,
Right?
that's right.
Now, we could take time and be like, man, it would have been great if we met when we were 30.
We've said that before.
Right?
Like, I wish I met you earlier.
Okay. But then we also realized, would I have been the man who was right for you at 30 with the woman that you were at 30?
Yeah.
Or would we have not been as compatible, right? If we met each other at 25, would we have been the same, like the right people for each other at that time? Maybe, maybe not,
Yeah.
right? Because
We were different people in those.
totally different
Yeah.
people. And so I feel like life's timing decided that the person you were at 40 and the person I was at 40, both with our adult children around the same age,
Yeah.
both needed to be in that same place where we met, and totally resonated with each other
Yeah.
because life's timing decided this is the time.
Yeah. This is the time for these two to meet.
If we would have met 2 years before that, both of us might have been in relationships. If we
Yeah.
might have met 7 years before that, both of us might have been in relationships and had different sets of values. And so I genuinely feel it is never too late to start learning a new skill, to make a new connection, to find love. And just because one of those things hasn't happened yet, or there's been tons of failures, I don't know. We both went through how many failed relationships?
Yeah.
Like long term,
Yeah, long term.
and where we put a lot of effort in
Yeah.
and didn't quite get the result that we were hoping for. And you could have, and I could have dwelled on the non-success of those relationships,
And then closed ourselves off and not been open to anything else.
that would have been a choice, and
Yeah.
and the feelings might have validated that choice. But for whatever reason, and both of us were probably on the edge of making that choice,
Yeah.
we decided to have an openness and discovered each other. And I was so open to meeting you,
Yeah.
so open to connecting with you. And I felt that reciprocated.
Yeah. Because I was in the same energy.
And we kind of haven't looked back,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So another example of life's divine timing would be what happened with the COVID pandemic happening literally a month after we got married.
Yeah.
And then all 6 of us cooped up in the apartment, and how that, and it
There's
almost
6
feels
of us in a 3-bedroom apartment.
1,100 square feet.
Yeah.
And how that felt like not only was it physically constricting, but they started adding more restrictions in
It's
BC.
scary.
They started making new rules, limiting movement, limiting access to different things. And it was becoming a bit dystopian, right?
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, where's this going to lead to? And it led to some pretty dark places for us in terms of like our work and finances and all that.
Yeah.
And we could have been like, oh, we had friends that moved out of Canada. We had friends that, gave into their workplace demands and said, just here's my body, sign me up. And we were like, do we stick with our integrity? Like, nobody wanted to hear our position,
Yeah.
right? Which I thought was based in integrity and science.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of pressure and a lot of fear. And so, yeah, we ended up with like cut off from friends, cut off from our sources of income, and life's timing would have felt like, what is going on? Are things falling apart? What are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being paralyzed by that, we started hustling like
Yeah.
twice as
We
hard,
put our thinking caps on.
our creative and thinking caps.
Yeah. And we figured our way through it. We didn't allow it to
Define us.
exactly. So again, with timing, things just happen when they happen, and holding on to time. I always find that sometimes when we set an intention, when we are trying to manifest or bring something into our lives, a lot of the strings that we have attached to those desires, these things that we want to bring into our life, have time constraints. That's what's really
like act now.
Yeah, like I want it now. I want it to happen instantly. But it doesn't work that way.
Why am I not finding true love on my schedule?
Yeah.
I have a lot of things. I'm a very important person with a lot of things going on. Can I just find true love next Tuesday at 7 p.m.? That would be wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we have to release and let go of.
Our attachment to finding things on our schedule.
It's like a straight line, everything that I put in there, right?
Yeah.
And it all goes back to knowing thyself.
100%. I love it. It feels like 10 rules is like a pyramid or a Christmas tree.
There's many more different things that I wanted to add in there, but I'm like, you know what, let's keep it a little bit shorter.
Boil it down to 10.
Right.
Otherwise, this would be a 7-hour podcast too.
I feel like it would be a full day podcast.
Well, all good things must come to a close, but I really appreciate your time, and
Thank you
I
for your
really
time.
appreciate your perspective.
Yes.
I think I hope a lot of people have gotten some value out of this deeper dive into the 10 different rules for 2025. You can of course check out Rhea's
video.
Like a 10-minute video.
It's a 10-minute video, yeah.
Banging through those things and in a really nice, calm, soothing way. And then what's coming up for the podcast? What are our plans before we go that we can share?
We've got some friends that we're going to have on here.
Yeah.
We've got Byron. We've got Tom we're going to introduce to you on the podcast as well. I think it's really important to introduce our family because you are seeing them on the channel.
Yes.
And a lot of other guests like your mom.
So yeah, essentially we're going to continue doing podcasts together.
Yeah.
As a couple, as co-hosts, but we're also going to be branching out into doing podcasts with other people. So I'll be interviewing guests, Rhea would interview guests,
Yeah.
and just a lot of cross discussions because our worlds are a lot bigger than you can imagine. And there's so many amazing people we admire and respect that we'd love to introduce you to and share their work and their life with you as well to evoke those lessons. So stay tuned for that, my beautiful friends.
And before we go, if you wanted to share with us your own navigation skills or tools that you would like to suggest in the comment section below, like what works for you, because I feel like sharing is caring.
What are your tools and rules
What
for
are your
2025?
tools and rules? Yeah. What
We
works
wanna
for
know.
you? Yeah.
We might do a new list in 2026, and it might be something that you shared with us that we're like, why didn't we think of that? That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Exactly.
So please, give us your feedback. We read every comment. We try and respond to as many as we can, and we really appreciate you taking the time to like, share, and comment. So please have yourself a wonderful day. We hope you've enjoyed our podcast. Anything you'd like to say before we go?
Thank you so much for being here, and until the next time.
Until the next time, I love you very much.
I love you too.
Okay, we love you. Take care.
We love you too.